Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Raquel Faria. I am an internal medicine consultant at the Centro Hospitalar Universitário de Santo António in Porto. Today, I'm joined by Professor Laurent Arnaud from the French National Reference Center for Autoimmune Diseases, RISO. Hello, Laurent. And it's in Strasbourg. And Dr. Cara McFarlane from the CME Learning in Manchester, UK. Hello, Cara.
Hi, thanks for having us on.
We're going to talk about lupus and social media, including motives for being active on social media, its use in lupus, audience reach, content value, and the future of social media and medical messaging for patients and healthcare professionals. So thank you so much for being here with us today. So let's start with a disclosure. I'm not a specialist in social media, to say the least. So before we start talking about lupus and the social media, Cara, can you please enlighten us to what is considered social media and what are the most used platforms currently?
Oh, thanks, Raquel. So social media is a digital technology that allows the sharing of ideas and information, including text and visuals, through virtual networks and communities. So there are a number of different social media platforms, as I'm sure our audience are well aware of. And some of these platforms include TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, as well as LinkedIn and X, which is formerly known as Twitter. And so I'd say that different platforms are used in different ways for lupus. So TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram, in our experience, has been used a bit more for patient awareness and more education and support. Whereas we use LinkedIn and X, which is more for the medical education side of things.
Thank you. Now I know a little bit more of that, and I was not aware that TikTok could be used for medical education. So
yeah, Selena Gomez is very popular on TikTok.
Good learning for me. I can't play my two adolescents from now on, so I don't know what they're really doing there. Laurent, you are one of the more preeminent voices in lupus online community, with almost 70,000 followers in X. What do you think is the social media role in medicine in general? Why?
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think there's truly a before and an after, and I think it changed many, many things. There's something a bit mysterious with social media, is that when you send a post, you are never so sure to whom the post is going to actually, who's going to read. It could be students, medical students, it can be colleagues, and I guess this is the broader part of the audience, but it can also be patients actually. There are some very large lupus patient communities that are online. And then there are some, industry members, people you have never heard of, colleagues. So that's a great and diverse audience. And I think what you can do with this social media, it really reflects this audience. I guess you can educate, you can teach, you can start a discussion to understand unmet needs. You can do some research. Maybe we'll come to that later. I think we can do so many interesting things with social media and medicine.
Thank you. Cara, as a not-profit independent medical education initiative, Lupus Academy uses also social media. Why do you think that educational organizations and even scientific journals should be active on social media?
Well, I think social media is an important part of today's world. It helps people stay connected and to share ideas, thoughts and opinions with others on a global scale, as well as to stay informed about current events and trends. And as a not-for-profit medical education initiative, Lupus Academy wants to ensure that those who are seeking accredited and trustworthy scientific and clinical updates in lupus know where they can find that information. So social media serves to keep our online audience up to date with our enduring learning materials and our meeting information and our podcast episodes. And it also helps us to keep up to date with what's happening in the local, national, global lupus communities and to support and develop relationships with other global initiatives and groups by liking and sharing their content.
Thank you. You mentioned something like the veracity of the content, which we are going to discuss a little bit later. But for now, Laurent, I'm your follower from
thank you,
at
thank you.
Lupus reference, and I think I re-entered X Twitter just to follow your tweets. So is that a nickname that you can call when you say that Laurent is at Lupus reference?
Well, yeah.
Is it a nickname that you can call? Whatever. I think everyone just understood me. What drove you to start it?
That's a nice question. Actually, I'm not so sure. I do remember how it started. It's actually a friend of mine who works in Dijon, who is a professor of medicine. And he told me, well, you should have a look. And I had no idea of social media. I'm not a Facebook user, whatever. So I thought, well, let's go and check. For me, Twitter, which is now X, was very much, political controversy, something very far from medicine. And after checking a little bit the medical content, I thought it would be an amazing opportunity to share. I think that's the key word. You can start discussion, share papers, you can ask research questions. So it's really a friend making a recommendation, and I think it was a perfect recommendation. I'm very happy with this.
Are you aware for how long have you been doing this?
Just a few years, actually. I think I started in 2019. I'm actually not so sure. This is where you see I'm not a true professional. I have no precise idea, actually.
Oh, and there's something that at least me, but I've discussed it with so many people now, and you also. Does it work well? Where does it work well and where it doesn't?
That's interesting. First of all, I think there's a little bias, which is that you have to be on this social media network to receive the information. In a way, if you are not a Twitter or X, whatever, member, you cannot read a post I would post. So obviously, there's a little bias in the audience. And my guess is that it's people who are actually interested in this fast pace. Because when you post something, it goes very fast to a huge community. And this is where I think it's great for disseminating the latest information. And that works very well.
Cara, what's your point of view as a professional for social media? What goes right? What goes wrong? What does work? What does not work? And please comment a little bit of what are the rules of being active? Like, do you have to post how many posts a day and so on?
So yeah, I definitely agree with what Laurent said there. I think for us, social media is just a timely source of information. So it's something that you can get out very quickly and to a very wide audience. And the more you post, generally we find, I think that's one issue, is you don't want to post too much if you don't want to keep repeating the same information. So by all means, it's great for posting new content and reminding people about content, because maybe not everyone checks their social media every day like I do. But I think it's good to get new information in a timely way. Just remind people it's there as well. That's the thing. It can be very saturated sometimes. Actually, you get a lot of posts in one day if you follow as many people as I do. So I think it's good for that. But then it's also a problem if you follow a lot of people. Sometimes some information can get lost. And I would say maybe where it doesn't work so well is just thinking about the quality or the kind of accuracy of the content that you're also reading. So I'd like to think that we follow very good lupus community people, but you don't always know the poster's credibility. It's something just to look into a little bit.
Thank you. Laura, let's just go back a little bit to something that you just highlighted a little bit, but I wanted you to comment a little more. So you mentioned that you are using X only also for research.
Yeah, correct.
And I've seen some of your surveys, and the clinical care gaps and all the need for lupus patients, you have been using it also for that. Can you comment a little bit? How does it work?
Sure. I think it's two different topics, actually, is identifying unmet needs on one side and is performing research on the other side.
Okay.
Well, when you're discussing with large communities of patients, it's actually quite easy to aggregate interesting information. For instance, you can post, well, we're trying to understand better what's the burden of lupus on your life. Can you tell us what's the highest impact you have? What's the most burdensome manifestation? And you'll get quite a lot of feedback. And that feedback, I believe, is really interesting. Is this enough to perform research? Well, it brings us what we said before. There's a little sample bias. So I'm not sure you can perform good quality research based on Twitter or X content by itself. But obviously, you can promote participation to other kinds of research, which can be done online. And you mentioned the word surveys, and we did quite a few surveys. For instance, we had the first study of the impact of COVID vaccination in lupus patients. Different groups were following just a few patients with lupus being vaccinated, and just all of a sudden, in less than a month, we gathered feedback from 900 patients.
Yeah.
And that's the power of social media. It goes to huge communities, and if people are interested, engage, they participate, and you can gather very large amount of data or interesting information.
And I'm absolutely sure that patients do feel more comfortable to participate when they are asked to on social media, at least those who are on the social media. And there is something that I also have feeds from scientific journals, papers that just came up, and but do you think that this is also biased, or do you think it provides a timely and robust information that can gather information both for physicians and researchers, and about the patients and carriers? Do you think this works for both sides?
Well, I think it does. I think it provides the opportunity for a wider audience. When you make research, you don't do research just for yourself, obviously, it's to serve the community. And so there is an interest that this research is heard about, understood, recognized by the community. And I'm, of course, talking about the colleagues because it can impact the care, but also by patients. And by posting about your latest research, well, you're able to deliver a content that I believe is timely. And again, that goes to a broad audience. We very recently published recommendations for physical activity in lupus. And we, of course, posted on social media. And the feedback from patients was really amazing because they can access the paper. And I think that before, they would have never heard of this paper, or maybe through a maybe slightly longer process, patient associations. But this is almost real time. The paper was published and immediately it was downloaded by thousands of people. So I really think that's one of the main strengths of social media.
Perfect. And what about the cons of social media?
There are some cons, of course. There are some cons, especially in the context of misinformation.
Yes.
I think that's a very critical issue. When we're talking about scientific papers, well, they've been through a strict research procedure. They've been authorized by ethics committee. They've been reviewed. So you know that the content is at least supposed to be of a good scientific quality.
Yes.
But when people are posting opinions, personal situations that are special cases, it can be very worrisome. And actually, I had the case very recently saying that, well, May is Lupus Awareness Month. And someone who I believe could be a patient posted, "This is a nightmare disease. It ruined my life." And so I started a small conversation with these people saying, "Oh, I understand. This is your truth. This is your perspective. But can you imagine what someone who has just been diagnosed with lupus will feel by reading a post like that? This is your personal truth, but it may not apply to everybody." And I think that's a bit of a danger. When there is no barrier, the content is not moderated, it goes to a very wide audience, and there may be some drawbacks.
Yes, and there are some risks about the groups inside the social media also. I'm only aware of some groups on Facebook, and some of them are really not good for newly diagnosed patients to read. Cara, what do you think about the cons of this social media on the perspective of a professional of publishing social media content?
Yes, again, echoing kind of what Laurent said, it's just about how do you moderate what is kind of the content that's going out there, and trying to follow people that are maybe reputable organizations or groups or individuals. And there are ways you can kind of look at that to see if this seems more reputable than others. But I think generally Twitter, from my experience, hasn't been too bad, but I agree with what you said. I think Facebook and some of these closed groups is where you maybe need to be a little bit more careful, especially if you could potentially be a vulnerable patient. But usually very helpful for disseminating research very quickly.
Perfect. For specific groups, it really needs a moderator. And some of these social media do not have moderators for specific groups. So there are awareness for violence, both emotional and physical, for females. There are moderators for this kind of contents, but for specific medical contents, there are not hired moderators by the different social media. So, Cara, you are a professional provider of social media content. So can you please let us know some of the tips for what do you think when you think of a content that is going to be published by the organization as a medical educator? How does this work? How does this work?
So yeah, at Lupus Academy, we primarily use social media to update our audience of our new educational content that we've developed with our experts, and also information on our annual Lupus Academy meeting. So we've been experimenting over the years to see kind of what gets the most reactions from our audience and what seems to actually be engaging them, because obviously we want people to engage with our posts and hopefully share the information that they'll find useful to their other posters, basically. So yeah, in the busy social media news feed filled with plenty of images and information, we've found that making it as visual as possible is the best way forward.
Yes.
We really like videos, so we used to do a bit more images, and images are obviously great, but videos, we find that it makes people sometimes pause and actually, rather than just scroll like, oh, there's a picture, they pause and say, okay, I'll just take a minute or two to watch this video, and this might be a clip from one of our workshops or educational content, but we found this to be really effective at capturing our audience's attention. You can also tweak the content for different social media platforms. So we're primarily active on LinkedIn and Twitter. And we found that Twitter is quite useful for getting across bite-sized bits of information. So we're all used to the character limits of Twitter, obviously. And this can be good for tagging bigger organizations or groups to then help that spread that information. Whereas LinkedIn, this gives you a little bit more space to work with, so you can maybe elaborate a little bit more in your post. And it's also quite useful for notifying specific people of new content. So we found that many physicians and other professionals, they'll tend to have a LinkedIn account, and they can be tagged if we think it's something interesting to them, whereas a lot of physicians don't actually have Twitter accounts. Well, maybe that's unfair to say a lot of, but there are certain groups that maybe don't want to engage with Twitter. So it's quite good to use multiple platforms to get different audiences.
Oh, perfect. Laura, Cara mentioned something about the more visual imaging and videos, and your X content is absolutely amazing. If you have our listeners, if you have not yet looked for @LupusReference on Twitter, please go there and you'll find excellent content. And it is both for healthcare providers, but also for patients. And it is a secret or not. I don't know if you want to share as it does, but you can just give us a little glimpse. What goes in your mind when you are preparing a post?
It's difficult to say because, as you've said, it's a little secret. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, no. I think the idea is really to reach a broad audience, and I think I would truly define myself as an educator. I think this is my daily job. I'm a professor of medicine, so I really like to teach and talk, exchange. I think you have to think about a content that can be understood by a diverse audience. And for me, the best post is when it is stimulating for the colleagues, but also for the students and for patient communities. You can read the information at different levels, different level of detail, and it brings something to these three groups. And for me, that's the best. It is not easy to achieve. It cannot be done in every case. Every post cannot be perfect, but I think targeting a broad audience is really something interesting.
And your posts are pretty graphic. And do you already hone this skill for amazing ability for slides that are different from anyone else? Or did you do a course or something like that to the informative
you're going to
visuals?
make me blush. Thank you. No, actually, to be honest, these slides are used for tweeting. They are not prepared for tweeting. These are slides I just prepare for giving lectures. I'm quite privileged to give lectures a bit everywhere, and these are slides that are then used to put on Twitter. And I think that's the power of images. A great image is much better than a long or even a short text. So when it's visual, people immediately grasp, understand what you mean. And this is an additional layer of social media. It's not just text. It's text and images, videos, and this is why the content is so rich and interesting.
And I really have to thank you for doing some of these slides in Spanish also.
Yes.
Not for thanking you, not for the Portuguese, but for Spanish.
No, but you are correct. I think the audience is very global, actually.
Yes.
And that's something I found fascinating, is that when you tweet, it goes to Saudi Arabia, it goes to Spain, it goes to Latin America. And we know there are some very interesting discussions that we should have all together about access to care, about treatment strategies, on a global perspective. And that is really, I would say, a privilege to reach these audiences that are a bit far from a geographical perspective, but then we can exchange and cross. I have some colleagues that are based in Africa. We don't meet very often, but we exchange information on social media. And this is a very unique perspective. Everybody will understand that the management of lupus in Africa is very different from what we can do in Europe. So these are great opportunity to share.
Yes, it's perfect, because even for presence, face-to-face meetings, some people are not able to go there. And Cara, actually, I do have a question for you. The Lupus Academy meeting every year, it's a face-to-face meeting where the discussion is excellent, where you learn a lot from sharing information with all the colleagues that are there. And but this excludes people that are unable to attend. So for the last year, we did a podcast trying to summarize a little bit, but how the social media can be used for delivering insights from meetings that were face-to-face, Cara, on a perspective of a timely way to maximize that, Cara, if you want to, and then I'll go to Laura. But can you ask us, please? Can you answer that, please?
So I think a lovely use of social media has been the sharing of meeting content in real time. I mean, it used to be that you would share a picture of yourself and maybe catching up with friends at a conference. But now there's actually a concerted effort to post the meeting content itself and all the updates as they're happening. So this could be, slides or posters or just anything along those lines. And I think a lovely example of this is actually a recent social media on X for the 14th European Lupus meeting of the European Lupus Society. I unfortunately wasn't able to attend that, but the cover to X from the many different individuals, groups and organisations, and Laurent was really fantastic. And it did make me feel like I was there. I had a really good understanding of what happened at the meeting and all the updates, which was great. And at Lupus Academy, we also do this for our annual meetings held in September. And we try to post regularly. I don't know if it annoys people because I'm constantly posting about everything that happens at Lupus Academy. So I hope people know what's happening. But we post about the presentations, the posters, the workshops, and just general updates and interviews as they're happening. And then we can actually ask our global audience who maybe weren't there, like, what questions do you have? We'll relay these. And what do you want to know about lupus? So yeah, I think it's great. It just makes people feel really involved, whether you're there in person or not.
I believe we are seeing more and more people taking photographs of the slides and posting. And actually, that's great because, of course, I'm following them too. And you can see meetings that are very far away that you could not attend, whatever is the reason. And almost in real time, you have these slides popping up, and that is really, really great. I think that's one of the thing I like the most with social media. This real-time content update, that's fantastic.
Perfect. Laurent, we're going to jump to a little bit different issue. That is, we have been talking, and on this podcast, we have been discussing month after month the gap of information and communication between physicians and patients, and what are the main issues for physicians to treat patients with lupus, and the complaints from the patients that are mostly discordant. So what do you think is the role of social media on straightening up this gap?
Oh, thank you. That's a difficult but really interesting question. You are absolutely correct. Obviously, there are many unmet needs, and discussion of subjective manifestations between patients and physician can be a little bit complex. And it's always the same. When there is a bit of complexity, there's a little bit of misunderstanding from both sides. And well, these tweets or these discussions about unmet needs, they're actually open to everyone. A patient can participate, physician can participate, and this is the mutual enrichment. Everyone can add a layer of information, participate in the discussion. And I do think that the result is a better understanding of these challenges across these communities. So I have learned so much about the impact, the burden of lupus from the patient side, of course, by taking care of patients on an everyday basis, but also on social media. And I also think that sometimes it's easier to write something and send press than to verbalize a complex idea.
Yes, yes. Cara, we came along with this issue during this conversation, but actually on a correct way and on like a methodological point of view, you as a professional for social media posting, what would be your advice to people regarding trusted sources of online information? Well, what should someone that is going through the feeds can picture as this is trusty, this might not be? What are your advice for that?
So I think doing a bit of light background reading on the source of information, if possible, is always the best bet. So for groups and organizations, these should be a bit easier to verify because they should have obviously a website. You can maybe have a little look and just see if they seem reputable. While for individuals, you might look at who else is following them to see if you recognize other reputable people there. So I would bet if Laurent follows someone, I probably think that they're a decent source of information. If they have very few followers, this would probably be a bit of a red flag for me, and I'd think, this is a bit weird that no one's really engaging with their content. So I think you just need to think critically about the content as well. If the information seems sensationalist or overly negative or overly positive, I would cautiously interpret that.
Okay, perfect. Laurent, what are your insights of these? Well, when do you trust information that you are reading?
I share the same perspective, actually. If you look at my Twitter account, you'll see that I'm followed by a significant community, but I'm following only a limited number of associations or representatives. And this is precisely because I think that we have a moral responsibility to advise or enable people to trust only people who deliver reliable information. So I have some friends or colleagues that they are following everybody, and this is precisely what I'm avoid doing. Only validated content, only sources that have double-checked myself, and I know that they are safe for patients.
So it is the same for who you decide to endorse, follow, or retweet. So
you are correct. You are absolutely correct. I'm always thinking twice before retweeting information. And I think we all have a moral responsibility here again. There are some very nice studies that prove that incorrect information, misinformation, is more retweeted and is spreading much faster than true, genuine information. And we understand why. When it sounds a bit strange, the brains like it in a way. And there's a big danger here. So this is why I'm always thinking twice about retweeting information. And I believe we should all do the same, actually.
And it touches what Carol was saying, the sensationalist information probably is not trusted, but is the one that people would look after and follow. So it is really, thank you for that. It is really...
But I do think that the main source of information should actually not be social media for patient communities. I think it's a way to be pointed towards validated source of information, and I think Cara said it very well. There are websites from international groups, associations with validated content, and I do think that the role of social media is pointing there, but not delivering information by random people. I'd be very careful about that.
And Cara, you're tweeting all the time, as you said, on a professional sense. So do you have any idea what is the most effective way of distributing information and interactions on the social media for the Lupus Academy audience?
Yes, I think for us, as I mentioned before, I think it's anything graphic and visual. People have limited time, they're scrolling quickly, they need to think something that's going to catch their eye in the first instance. So I think if we want to reach our audience to get the important information across, videos and images are always a great starting place. And I think that is a great strong point of social media. It just allows you to include complex information in an attractive and digestible format.
Okay, so trying to organize a little bit different so everyone can understand what we are dealing here with. So, Laura, what are the main groups and organizations that you think that both on social media or websites are of particular value for patients and healthcare providers to follow?
Oh, that's a great question. So I'm going to answer specifically for lupus.
Yes.
And I think I'd like to start by the international organizations that are recognized by everybody. I'm thinking EULAR, for instance. I'm thinking the SLE Euro, the European Lupus Society. These are sources of trusted information. But I also like to mention the very important role of the European reference networks, and especially RECONNECT, which in a way is responsible or taking specifically care of patient pathways in the context of lupus. For me, these are really a must because these are from very large and validated organizations. And then there are lots of different groups. I'm thinking patient associations. I follow most of them. I think it's really interesting. And of course, the Lupus Academy.
Cara, from the point of view of Lupus Academy as a non-profit organization, what are the main other organizations that you think should be on the Twitters or links to websites that you think it's good to provide for those that are following Lupus Academy?
Yes, I obviously agree with all the organizations Laurent mentioned. They're all great sources of information online. There are a number of many wonderful organizations and groups out there, but I think some of my go-tos, who I really like for providing timely and very patient and physician-friendly information, be Lupus Europe. Lupus UK is another example. Lupus Research, they post wonderful research updates, really nice, clear information. Lupus Foundation of America is another one, and Lupus Science and Medicine as well. They really useful to follow. So I'm sure I've left some out, so please don't be angry at Lupus Academy if I've forgotten you.
But these are great communities. I think that's really, really
very
nice.
friendly,
I do follow the
accessible.
same, actually.
Yeah.
So, Cara, for this is your job, but for most of the physicians, it is not a job. So, Laura, do you think this is helping physicians tweeting, reading tweets, having feedback? Or do you think it's just more a waste of time of a very, very busy day?
It is a difficult question because I believe everybody's different. For
Yes.
sure, I don't think people should start registering, following social media if they are not interesting. It's not like a life goal. I just think that it's a door open to a timely, accurate, interesting information. And I guess this is the case for many of our colleagues, even those who are a bit time challenged in a way. I don't think everybody needs to boast and participate. You can follow in a passive but interesting manner. Just read what's going on when you have the time, not being forced to do so. I think that's a very good compromise.
Yes, that's my case. That's my profile.
Oh,
I'll go and read something, and actually, I found out that I'm aware of research earlier than before. So that fits my profile. That way of using social media. Changing again a little bit the subject, and of course, it has not so much to do with social media, but for someone like me, when I look at social media interaction and the algorithms, I think of the way artificial intelligence is changing our life. And we can be worried about being passive in relation to that, because I don't know how the algorithm for my search works, but we can use it, and we need to know more how to use it. And we are using artificial intelligence for lupus, Laurent. First of all, what do you think this can help us?
I'd say welcome to the digital world. I think that's the link between social media and artificial intelligence, that more and more digital is incorporated in our daily life. I believe this is true for the daily life. Now, nobody uses maps, paper maps anymore. Everybody goes to famous apps to locate your favorite restaurant. But I must say that in the field of internal medicine or rheumatology and lupus in general, the penetration of artificial intelligence is still very limited. Of course, I can think of many applications, but in the real world, what are we currently doing with artificial intelligence in the field of lupus? I think is very limited.
And what do you expect to the future?
I think we can expect some great changes. Obviously, the number of physicians, rheumatologists, internists, clinical immunologists is limited. And on the other side, there's a huge demand for medical care. If we're talking about lupus, it represents around 3.4 million people in the world. And of course, unfortunately, a significant proportion of these patients are not doing very well. But is this reasonable in the future perspective to see at the consultation patients that are going well, just to renew a prescription? Maybe we should dedicate our energy to these patients who actually truly need the care. And I think this is where artificial intelligence may help by prioritizing the patients that we should see at the consultation, the most active ones, and maybe taking care of questions, of things that can be automated and not done by the physicians themselves.
But there are, of course, challenges to control the quality of its use. Do you have any particular detail in mind that would challenge its use on the future?
Yeah, I think so. I think we are all trained in medical diagnosis, medical reasoning, medical thinking, and it's a very strict way to think, incorporating lots of things. And when we take a decision, we usually know why we take this decision. And if we are unsure, we're able to discuss with the colleagues. And I think that's a great strength of our daily work. Artificial intelligence, in many cases, is like a black box. You put some things in, you get an output. it can even be a choice for a treatment. It's been done in the field of oncology. And when it goes wrong, it can go really wrong.
Yes, we are not yet there. Cara, do you have any additional thoughts on social media and maybe artificial intelligence?
I would say artificial intelligence is not my strong suit at the moment, but I think it will change for sure how we use and interact with social media. But who knows at this point?
Laura, do you want to add anything?
No, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to discuss social media, but also artificial intelligence. I think social media is very much already rooted in our daily life. And I think social media is really evolving. Not is the same for artificial intelligence. I think this is not coming in our daily life within at least 5 years, or for very minor applications. So let's see what the future is made of.
So, Laura and Cara, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your insights. To our listeners, we do hope these discussions have helped provide insights into lupus and social media use. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please leave us a review, which will really help us in reaching as many of your colleagues as possible around the world.